Oh, yeah, you get down there today?
I did. I snuck away from North Jersey.
Nice. That video posted on Juana's Facebook page.
Oh, LL Cool J? Oh, geez.
So what's that about?
That's her longtime crush.
She was talking to him.
Yeah, I know. I didn't even know she did that last night.
What was that about? It's pretty cool.
That was cool. She's always into like the celebrities, finding these people on whatever and following them Instagrams and stuff.
So it was like a FaceTime thing with a bunch of people on there, and he called her out because he saw it was her birthday?
Yeah, I think they do like birthday shout outs at night, I guess. And like as she was on, she got picked. So I think she was surprised.
Wow. She said it made her day. Good for her.
Good for her.
Nice. What else going on?
Not much. I was trying to read before this, seeing where we're at with the openings. I guess that they made more announcements today of like what stage phase 2 is going to be. Day camps, non-contact sports, the restaurants, outdoor dining, and partial indoor dining. And they're saying I think it was June 6th or June 8th, next Monday.
Yeah, saw that too.
That's it, man. I think we're about a week away from trying to get back to some kind of normalcy.
Yeah, something. I'm hoping that we don't go back. I was telling that I told that to the person we spoke to yesterday on the phone, right?
Uh-huh. Yes, he was
like normal. It's like I don't.
In some way, I wish too that shit. I wish I could stay home forever. I mean, this is like quasi vacation, but it's like an uncomfortable vacation. I'd rather things be normal so we're comfortable.
Yeah, maybe it's just what normal is. Like, I mean, normal. What the hell's that? Like, the more I take a look at like where I've been and what I do and the whole, just kind of tracing from being a lawyer, being a dad, being a husband, open up a float center. I mean, I don't know that I'd like say, awesome, normal, some of it, I know normals are probably not the best word to use, but it's not, maybe better way to say it is, I think it could be better. I think it could be, I think maybe that this thing has opportunity written all over it, and maybe the conversation should be less about normal and more about what got us to this point.
Yeah, I do feel like there's a stronger commitment of working together now. I feel like people are kind of joining hands in ways that before we wouldn't have. And I think that could change things, life, business, politics, whatever.
Yep. That would seem to be something that we could do if we were to take advantage of some of the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah. So it's funny today. I was talking to my food truck guy because we're talking about the food truck, the aspect of just the food truck portion. And so he starts telling me, he's like, Ralph, he's like, I got so many fucking ideas. He's like, my problem is execution. So I threw on him a little fucking Officer Shaman. I said, you know why? I was like, because you're a dreamer and I'm a stalker. Mm-hmm. You're going to dream about this stuff and don't worry about it. I'm going to make, I'm going to be the guy that's going to follow through and do it. But it's funny how when I was telling him about dreaming and stalking, bro, this guy I think he was just totally in tune. Like, wait a minute, explain that again. And then I threw a little bit in there, like, I think what John was saying, if you're a dreamer and that's your right hand, and you're a righty, that's your strong point, doesn't mean you can't be a stalker with your left hand. And Howie went all over it, and it's in some ways true, because I look at this guy and he's got a lot of things. He's successful, but he's more the thinker. He thinks about these things, and if he doesn't have his people to execute, or like guys underneath him that are better in probably that stalking realm, I don't think his business would get done. But instead, he surrounds himself with what the right team is, and then I think inadvertently he sets himself up with a nice team and set himself up for success. So it's funny how these things that John is talking about in real life, real world, they do play out.
Yeah, that's the point of it, right? We got access to tools that we can use with our hands, and the rest of us to better express who we are.
And the vocabulary of this is just a model. In some way, it's true. This is a model. Religion's a model. Therapy's a model. Meditation's a model. Anything could be a model. But in some way, it's about thought and logic. So there's a truth behind what's going on here.
Yeah, it's a model. It's it's the way to navigate through your life.
That's right.
I this empathy function that we're talking about is a pretty weighty, big concept.
It is. I'd like to understand it more. You were giving good examples yesterday.
Well,
I want to try to wrap my head around the empathy, the meaning of empathy.
Well, let's see if I can maybe put some more color around it. You'll remember from earlier episodes, one of the things that we talked about is you can't see what you're looking with.
Yeah.
Right? That's because if you're looking at a lens, through a lens that you use to interpret the world, right? That would be the level of belief, right? That would be, that would be belief. You look at the world through your beliefs. And I don't even know, if you only allow yourself to see certain things, which everybody does, then that's all you're ever going to see. For me, one of this particular topic has been a well, like a whack in the head many times, because you can't see what you're looking with, but yet that doesn't mean that you don't see the attributes of it or the reality that shows up from that, right? And everybody can see what's going on. I could see where business is at Quantum Floats. I can see where business is the law firm. I can see what goes on in my marriage, where the fights are, and where we get along. And I can see the same with my partnerships. But then the question is like I can see the things showing up. I think most people get that part, but can you take a look at why? Can you consider why they show up? That's it's always been for me the easy to look at someplace other than myself for an answer to that. That's I'm not a lone wolf in that behavior. It just seems that it's been convenient to to look and say, it must be can't be because of me. You following so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, all right, you take it. So you say it is because of you. And
Okay.
then where do you go from there?
Well, let's keep in mind that what we're talking about here is agreement. That's not because it just happens to be an interesting topic, although it is, but because we're talking about like how reality gets created. I mean, we're hanging a structure that you can use this model on everything that gets created that you do. I mean, all the stuff that I'm talking about in my life, the law firm, the house, the people who come work here, who don't come work here, the people who listen in on the patio chats, the colleagues that are on the call with me now, and everybody else is all part of reality. Okay. And I've had my hand in it, right? So now you're asking, like, what do I do? And like the question is like, is it to my liking? And I've asked this question of myself lots of times and have come up with the answer: no, it's not. It could be something that would be more to my liking. But then the question again is why? And the only place to look, the only place ever to look, because it's the only one that that I can start with, is my own leading actor role in this reality. I'll give you some examples. Okay. Um, I don't know. I think we had a conversation. I grew up in, I guess you'd call it maybe a broken family, although I don't know that maybe that's may not be the best thing to call it, considering, and I think I was pretty lucky and pretty fortunate overall. My parents got divorced when I was young, but they were alive and they brought me up, and I mean, they gave me a good life to be thankful of. But there's some funky thoughts that came out of that. Like my mom was really young and she protected me, um, and she was just a kid, and she was a rebellious kid, and everything for my mom was about feel goods and stuff. And I came out with that same lens on, and it um, what it meant is that I went out to the world then with a lens on that was something like, you have to make me feel good. uh, just think about that, right? It's like, I mean, I didn't wear a sign that says you have to make me feel good, but I might as well have, because that's a pretty selfish thing to do if you think about it. First of all, nobody can make me feel good. And how can I then ever meet somebody in terms of even figuring out what they want if the only thing I'm thinking about is how do I get what I want? Right. So very much I was wired to how do I get what I want? What's in it for me? And it played out in all aspects. It played out in my business life. It played out in how I treat women. With women, for example, I grew up just thinking that they were like for like sex or for like comfort, like that a woman was supposed to comfort me, right? And so that the game, if you can call it that, or the lens that I looked at, or the way I always went about it was that I'd always look for the comfort. I would, like, everything I did with women had that goal in my. Ralph, you just got to hear this. It didn't seem like that to me at all, because I'd never taken a look at like what was really behind it. It just looked like this is what you do. This is how I get my love in. This is and so over time, that lens. Remember, you can't see what you're looking with, but with the help of some other people, I got to take a look at those things. And I will be the first to tell you, and that it wasn't. Yes, awesome, great, thanks very much. Um, I can't believe, you've unlocked, you've unlocked a new way to go about life for me. Instead, it was more like nah, I don't think I really do that. And who are you to say that anyway? So, I fought against that. I fought against the places where I was the leading actor role in this reality. Um, but empathy function is about what kind of the thing that you talked about the other day. What was your wife saying to you about the boat? What did you need to do or think about in order to even be able to see what she was saying? Right. So for me, I didn't really want to see it, what Maria was saying, what anyone was saying. I was just like, well, this is all one big kind of game. And, let's see how I can go about manipulating this so that the ladies would like me. This is not something I'm proud of, but I guess that's besides the point. The point is that you asked the question, like, what do you do? Well, if I'm here to create shit, which I am, and if I'm promoting the office of shaman and the work of agreements, I already know that agreements create reality. And I know that people are, in order to figure out what is on somebody else's mind, I've got to be honest with myself about what I'm doing. Right? I mean, just think about that. Like if everything for me is like this domination or a scorecard of women liking me, do you think there's even the slightest possibility that I can possibly see what, say, a woman wants or what she's interested in? You think there's even space for that in the way that I went about it?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, fuck no. It's just no way. I had to really take a look and a hard look at what I was doing. In order to be able to reach across and see what it was that the women in my life were doing, or what they wanted to do, or what they were supposed to do, who they were. And I told you the story, I think, a couple of days ago about that. Like, one way that I can talk about this is that literally the way Maria looked to me changed. That's crazy because the way she looks at actually didn't. Well, I mean, I could maybe make the way anybody looks to me or the way anyone looks to you is what you allow yourself to see. Right? If you're going to see ugliness, if you're resentful and angry, guess what? That's going to affect or color how they look. So when I dealt with this issue of where I was and what I was doing with women and the way I was treating them like self, just, sex objects and things for like my pleasure, then of course I could never get that because nobody's ever going to agree to that. It's, there's nothing that's of substance for there. So it ended in frustration every time. Of course it did. It's like, it's just like, it's crazy. It's like I was aiming for something that nobody would ever give me because they couldn't give me. And so it was frustration. And because it was frustration, there was ugliness. It was like, that's how Maria looked to me until I started to take a look at myself and say, oh, wow, this is a pattern of behavior that I wrote as code from, the early days of, being with mom, and what I observed is my experiences growing up, and more in particular, what I decided or what I believed is real. That's really what we're talking about here, right? There's some part of me that's trying to express, but it's got to express through a lens. And empathy function is a way that we express. It's an aspect or a facet or a way to describe a expression of who I am, who you are, who everybody is, and in particular, one that expresses to allow a person to see who somebody else is. Ah, interesting. To see who somebody else is. You know, what do you got to do to see who somebody else is? Why do you think it matters, to have to take a hard look at me or to you or to anybody else to even first be able to see somebody else? Pretty important, right? It's a kind of a necessary start point.
Yeah. If you're not, I guess if you're not true to yourself, if you're not honest with yourself, how do you be empathetic towards the other person?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. I think that we could look at this whole COVID experience and as one that's highlighting some thoughts in society that are not particularly empathetic.
Do you think like desires changes the thought pattern when it comes to empathy in women?
Ask it again. Desire. Yeah, ask that again. I'm not
So
sure.
like, all right, so like your expectation of women in some way, is it was this thing in your mind, right?
Yep.
But at the same time, with the opposite sex, we're dealing with like the sexuality thing.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't want to say like a comparison, you know what I'm saying? But like all of a sudden, listen, we're a little older. You start looking at the trophy 30-year-old, you know what I mean? That desire, that feeling does, I think, create a filter for us to kind of show empathy in another way, or it blocks because, I don't know, men are stupid sometimes. So like you want to be empathetic towards, your female situation, but somehow can desire block that or, make it a hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, that sex thing is hardwired.
I don't know, Ralph. Do you want it to?
Yeah, I think that's the right question. Go ahead, John.
That's all of it.
Yeah, that's probably the. Yeah.
You
I
can
just.
if it
Yep.
if you're into it, Ralph. Okay, I don't mind.
Yeah.
So I just hear as guys get into 40s and 50s, we all have very similar fight with our wives.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to use that as an excuse? It's fine with me. I'm not telling you.
You may be right. You're right.
Like, yeah, it's what it comes down to.
I'm not arguing it with anybody. Okay.
Nope.
Really. It's just that. Okay. Why not?
Yeah. Yep. I could if you want.
I guess whatever your mind wants, you put it there. If you wanted to make it, I guess it would be blocked. If you don't, it wouldn't be.
Yeah. Who am I to say even? I mean, that's part of the thing I'm talking to you about is that places in my thinking that were judgmental of what someone else is doing. Oh my God. It's just like, it's all over the place. I don't, it's what I do has to, for me, it makes sense to think about why I do things, and, I mean, and then decide whether it works for me. Everybody else, I give them the freedom to do the same thing. And even some assistance to point out places in their thinking where they may not be paying attention to the shit that gets created because they may be thinking with their dick or not respecting people or keeping their word about things. That's but I say that in the most as not to make a judgment about good or bad. And I've made enough of those in my life. It's more like that's why this model we're talking about, it doesn't have a judgment thing on it. It's not it's like, here it is. Go ahead, use it however you want. But it's handy because, like, for me, what I'm talking about is like getting a look at what I want to make real or what's showing up and why it shows up in my life is pretty freaking handy, you know?
If it works in business terms, it's got to work in emotional, relationship terms. So there's truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the way thought works. It's from the programmatic point of view, it's nothing but consistent.
But I feel like
A program, your belief, whatever you believe to be real, either is real or becomes real, said John Lilly, with certain, I'm not forgetting the exact quote, with certain limitations that you could discover through your experience or experiments. And a program that Ralph Acquaviva or Ken Kaplan writes or anybody else writes, and especially we've been talking about those beliefs, those operating system, those, programs at the bottom of the pyramid, they become the rule of the life. Just like I'm talking to you on my computer here and I got my iPhone there and there are programs on it, and yeah, I'm going to do the same thing over and over and over again until you recognize it and change it. So, brutal honesty is the tool, right? That's what we say. Brutal honesty is the tool which releases the energy governed by empathy function. How much do you think of brutal honesty has to do with taking a look at your own programs, in particular, things you believe are real?
a major part of it, no?
Oh yeah, that's yeah. Yep, that's the kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
Well, what can be more handy though than having the skill set to facilitate or garner or grow or whatever you want to talk about, however you want to phrase it, agreements. Because if you remember, it ain't a one-sided thing. We're giving a pictorial image of the playing field is two dimensions with part of the triangle on one side coming over to the other side and the other side coming over to that side. And only when that can happen can there be an overlap, and we call that overlap reality created. So that's a pretty freaking handy skill. I mean, who has a skill set here, to actually deal with this? I mean, this is supposed to be this is a usable way for Ken Kaplan and Ralph Acquaviva and everybody else to measure every activity against this, or use this construct model to create reality, right?
That's right.
Okay. Any comments here? Anyone on the facilitator side want to chime in?
Well, Ken, you're awfully dire in the way that you present this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tell me how it sounds dire, and so I can see it.
Well, the map isn't the land that it describes, is it?
No, the map's not the thing.
Okay.
It ain't.
I mean, what the map does is it kind of gives you an idea about what you might encounter in terms of geography.
That's it.
Mostly in distance and how many turns the road has and where the creeks are and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's a good map. Yep, that's what it should do.
Okay. tell you where not to go over the mountain, that kind of thing, maybe.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Usable.
yeah. You you know, empathy function or any of these kinds of things, they're not the reality that we create, but this thing that you're looking at here is a map for how I could create reality. If I had all those pieces in play, I should be able to create something real in my life, whether it's to buy a car or to go to the grocery store. I mean, if this would work, if this would be a map for that, it should in theory provide points of understanding at on any interaction that's caused by or is related to agreements between human beings.
Yeah,
If that were true, right?
that'd be true. Yeah, and like maps, places to navigate to the place that your destination.
Mm-hmm. And so the thing is that folks sometimes have trouble thinking about these ideas in terms of navigational aids, because we don't really have a way of holding these kinds of thoughts in our heads, and we call these kinds of thoughts abstract ideas or abstractions, because they don't have, you can't really touch them, although if you use them, they're like catalysts that in a chemical reaction, they don't really have anything to do necessarily with the reaction, but if they're not present, then the reaction doesn't take place. And it's like these thoughts are kind of like that. They don't really have anything to do with what it is that we actually see, but without these archetypical ideas being represented in some fashion or the other, then reality doesn't really click all the way. And we can use that to look at any given reality if that were the case. So, for instance, if we were to look at Ralph's, a restaurant, any restaurant, or let's say a 7-Eleven type store, mom and pop got a space out in front and of the house there, and the house is on one level, and so they could open it up, and the city didn't really mind, and the cops come by because dad used to be a cop, and so they have a little donut shop store there that people they run till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then mom goes and watches Days of Our Lives again, and pop goes and takes a nap on the lazy boy, and then they go back and restock for tomorrow. Well, that's an agreement, a reality that's created,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And it has all of those parts.
All of the parts that we're, all
Yeah.
of the parts of this abstraction.
Right. And
Yeah.
you could take this and see where things are going. Our donut sales are off, Pops. What's going on? Yeah, well, I had to change donut suppliers, and the guys don't like these new donuts the same. Let's go back to the other one. You understand?
Yeah.
In other words, you adjust that reality because you look at it and you say, okay, well, what was that specific function? Well, it had to be there had to be a specific function that the people liked. They wanted those donuts to taste a certain way and to be filling and be sufficiently grease laden and that kind of thing, so that they would clog your arteries rapidly because they were police people. They needed to have that. Besides, they thought that kind of thing tasted good because it obviously does.
Yeah, that's true.
So rather for me personally, I don't like saying that this is a real thing. I like saying, look, this is a map for you to follow for you to refer to while you're creating whatever you're creating in your life. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think I'd say taking what you said and say that the law is has a similar purpose in what I do as a lawyer, but not just what I do. I think it's for everybody. But I can think about it in particular ways of having a client that wants to sell a business, and then on the other side somebody that wants to buy a business, and have the law and the things about the law, which is an abstraction, you know, what can we do? You know, what has to be done? What has to be filed? You know, how does, you know, ownership get transferred? You know, and all sorts of things that I use this abstraction called the law to get something done. Okay. But I think I'd say too that while that the way I think of law as an abstraction, I also think of law as a certain, I don't know whether I'd say a certain, um, can I say level of abstraction? Because as I've gotten more into understanding the playing field as an abstraction, I can see that I can hang a lot of other things within that, including my whole law abstraction. I can hang within the playing field abstraction, and it can assist me because then I can see with that contract or with that deal how things like, you know, these functions operate and how the tools can come into play to facilitate getting a deal done. Make sense?
Yeah, that's making more sense. Not, every time your guys are explaining it, more and more becomes clearer.
Yeah, I think that you're right there, Ken, because I think that in reality, if you slow it down and you take time to define these ideas more carefully and more slowly and more open-endedly, perhaps, then what happens is that it's easier to follow the concept, because rather than having to watch it, you can say, okay, let me lay it down over there and treat it as though it might be true. That's how we treat maps, because maps cannot, I don't care what that lady in the dashboard says. She does not know where she's going. She cannot see, she can't see what I see. Especially not Mexico, maybe. She lies about that.
Make a right turn in 200 feet, you're saying?
Yeah, 200 meters.
200 meters?
And if I did, I'd end up in somebody's cow pasture, and I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I know that's how people are. I mean, that lady in the dashboard tells you stories. So she can't really drive the car no matter what she's telling you, she can't do it.
Yeah. Well, also, I think the point we're talking about here is that this playing field is an abstraction and it's navigational purposes,
Yeah.
not the thing.
It's not the actual road that I'm driving on, no matter what that lady says.
Yeah.
Okay. So but it does give me an idea about where Guadalajara should be, kind of. I should, if it should be on the end of this road that I'm on, right? I mean, that's where it's supposed to ought to be. It doesn't tell me anything at all about what Guadalajara is. It just tells me where Guadalajara should be. It shows me where the streets are.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me anything about how to drive on them damn streets. So
Yep.
that's all up to me.
Yep.
And of course luck.
Yeah. I think like it'd tell you that it could tell you where the agreement I don't know that I'd say ought to be, needs to be, or
Yeah,
yeah, something like that.
it can tell me how to get to that place, right? But
Yep.
I'm the one that has to navigate through that still, don't I?
Yep.
I have to
Yeah.
take these tools, and I have to say, okay, if I want these functions in the agreement, then I have to be using these tools I've got, so that I can see what the hell the agreement needs to be, and I know what my part of that agreement needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like.
Well, we'll get into that more in a couple of these other two functions, right?
Yeah. We're going to move next week into the last of the two functions, intuition, and then we'll conclude with agreement.
Which is in reality a function but it's a result of all the functions. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
ran on at the mouth, and I got you off your.
No, I don't think you did. I don't know if you did, then it doesn't seem that way to me. It seems more like bringing me back onto a path, or maybe straying. But well, in any case, okay.
So Ken, how might somebody that's seeing this, for the first couple of times, even if we're talking months here, how do they start to find out what this map means? Like, what do they have to be doing?
Yeah, I would say that the places where we can become proficient, learn, use, have everything to do with the tools. That if you want, I'm looking at this thing that's up on the screen right here, and it's got all of these, this map depiction of quadrants and then points on it, and all the things that are written here on this particular slide here have to do with what we call the functions. But the functions are how the spirit expresses through us. Okay, but the places where I've always been able to use and get more proficient has everything to do with the tools. It's like, yeah, you mean I can learn how to rewrite a program? I can do that? Yeah, you can. Or why would I want to do that? Well, because, if you want to be more proficient at agreement, maybe you ought to look at some of the inconsistencies in your thought. You mean I don't have to have just that one way that I grew up looking at something?
Well, Ken, everything you're saying is accurate.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But I think what I'm pressing on is this all seems very theoretical right now, philosophical. And we keep saying that the word's not the thing, right? And this is a map. It's not the actual event. Mm-hmm. It just kind of points out what some of the things you might be looking at or for, where they might be coming from, right? Ways to think about how it's happening.
Yeah.
So I think for someone that was looking to actually kick the tires on this, you just got to go try and make something happen with someone else in your life. Just go try and do it. And in the course of the yin and the yang and the back and the forth and the communications, you're going to start to feel this out. Because, B1's not a dot on the red corner of a triangle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's not. Yeah,
it's not.
Go out, get some experiences, and then consider it in terms of this abstraction.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes I feel like these very instructive graphics paralyze people at the intellectual level, where they're like trying to think it all through, when what you really need to do is go try to accomplish something.
Yeah.
With somebody else.
Yeah.
So I love that he said that, because again, I'm a couple months into this, and I'm always dealing with people, staff, peers, and I've been trying. But you know what happens is, I've been finding out is because, and this is why I've been so interested in learning more, because I've only scratched the surface. I have to be careful with where I go with it. So like, I'll give you an example.
Yeah,
seriously, because I'll start mentioning to this guy about stalkers and dreamers, and then all of a sudden he wants to know more, and I'm not there yet.
Yeah, you can't talk too much about things that you don't actually know.
Yeah. And things like this are important because it's their brains, and you pique their interest quickly. It's
types
funny.
of people, right? Yeah.
No. I'll give you an example. Ken was talking to the coffee distributor, and I was trying to describe quantum floats floating. And then when Ken came in and started saying his blurb about it, introducing like the mind aspect of it, these guys, his audience was paying attention. I just noticed that once you start talking about how somebody feels and, you know, something that can help them in their brain, they'll pay attention because we all have something.
For sure.
Yeah.
But then they're going to want to know more. That's why it's like, you know what? You got to kind of know what's going on if you're going to lead them down this path. That's why I'm trying to learn more, because there is a path. There is this map that we all have. And other people's maps are really fucked up, you know? And as you're trying to clear up their map, you don't want to make it more fucked up.
I think that's right. Yeah. I guess I could say you gotta crawl before you walk.
Yeah, that's true. You know, and then I think about like the guys down in Mexico. You know, these guys getting their ass kicked, what they're doing, it's actually making them probably really strong in this aspect. This way, if they're ever coming back to Jersey or expanding what they're doing, man, you know what? They got a really good foundation of how to help people, not in just like the role thing, the wellness. You know, in these in these questions that people need answered about the brain, about the mind, about this.
Yeah, I think that's extremely true, Rolf. When I was in Pennsylvania, I hadn't considered half the things that I considered now. Talking to my clients and actually where are they suffering and what are they suffering and is it really their body that I'm working on? I mean, that's one way to begin to talk about it, but what I found is like my own suffering, the things that were really bothering me were the way I believed about things, the way I thought about the world, the way I thought I saw it. I was creating my own discomfort. It was me that was creating all that. And I had to actually just have a different way of thinking about it and approaching it. And that changed my entire interaction with other people. And that's definitely still happening. There's things to still look at. There's places to grow and new ways to look at things that I've never even considered before. And to have that perspective that, you know, there's more out there than just Pennsylvania Jesse, where he grew up with a mom that babied his ass and took care of everything and protected him from the world. There's a whole other world out there that I'm now available to, and I can see those places. And without going through the work and using the tools, I would still be doing the same thing. So the process has been totally, I guess it's a growing experience. It's like going from a childlike mind to actually growing and maturing and seeing my place in humanity in the world.
And also having the mentor there to answer the questions, because again, you know, we might be the same because you're a novice at this too. And when I'm getting people to ask me at my level what it is, I don't get to go back to, you know, John. I get Ken, you know, but you guys are like living with John. So I think in this aspect, it's such a great way to kind of get it all in and, you know, get it organized in your brain. This way, when you go to help the other person, or like, again, the agreement or conversation is I explain, you know, I tell you, and then you'd be able to explain to somebody else.
You wouldn't mind taking a breath here just for a minute, would you? Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. You know, on that Slack channel that Vanessa sent you, you could talk to John anytime you wanted to.
You know, I didn't know that. I gotta join that Slack now.
Yeah.
That's where all the fun stuff happens, Ralph.
Right. Keeping you look out for me.
Okay.
You have something you want to say here or not? No? Are you bashful again?
Oh, here you go.
Okay, here you go. Come so where you can get close to the mic.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, George.
What's up, George?
What's up, Ralph? Yeah, I can definitely attest to that, Ralph. I mean, last time I spoke on here, I talked about how living with John, it's like this stuff is at the forefront of your mind, really. Or if it's not, it once you learn more and you see how it applies everywhere, it's like it's like, wow, like this really it's really, really useful. like last time we talked, I talked about kind of what I'm thinking about psychology and how I'm thinking about it. Really, the is based on the playing field and the tools and the functions, what it is that I'm going to be doing with people, what sort of reality I'm creating, and what has to be in place for that reality to be created, and as a way also to understand my clients. You know, in that way, I'm very much a novice too at this, where I'm still trying to see to, to see where all these functions can be seen in people, you know. But yeah, it's extremely useful. It really is, and the only way, like Paul is saying, is you have to use it. You have to do something with it. A trap I fell into for many years, and I'm just getting out of it, is I I played with it like it was a mental exercise, like it was things just to think about and to intellectualize about and understand intellectually. I didn't see the value. I didn't understand the value of actually having the experience of like what Paul's saying. You know, you use it. You know, it's it's way more useful than just intellectualizing about it.
And George, one of the funny things is when you do start to use it, you realize the truth of the statement that the word is not the thing. Because when you actually get a look at whatever the particular thing is in your mind and how it functions, you realize that even these very instructive graphics fail to really lock it down. You have to experience it, and then you go, oh, okay, now I get it. Okay, now it's clicking. But until you get there, you're right, it's just that pure intellectual analysis.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've started to see the difference because I've been seeing things I didn't see before about how large and abstract these concepts are, and they're it's like they're fields of endeavor, fields where things happen. It's not, you can't define B1 function, you can't define harmony function. They're like, I don't know, fields of endeavor, large swaths of activity. They're abstract. So yeah, I'm starting to see that, and being with John is it's and Sandy, of course, and everyone here is really helpful.
But you said, I think last time and again today, about you're looking at psychology because you have a degree, and I know when you first got to quantum, you were thinking about if and how that would be useful to whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe the question more is you didn't know really what you wanted to do. Have you got more you can put on that about how you see things now?
I can say a little bit more about that. So how I'm thinking about it is that, if, like, different psychologists in the past, especially, it's easy to think about, the famous psychologists, they all had a way that they approached their craft. Skinner had his way, and Freud had his way, and Jung had his way. Um, and so how I'm thinking about it now is it's like this is how I could approach the craft. That would be my um, orientation, like how I go about it, and I've really been thinking about the goals means program because uh, programming it's the first thing you deal with people, and you have to deal with programming, otherwise you can't move the assemblage point. And so I'm thinking about how I would use the goal, how I would have to use the goals means program when I'm talking to people, whether it's therapy or talking over soup that I gave them in the kitchen. I'm not thinking about it as in an office. you know?
Yeah.
Like, more so I'm thinking about it like what, when people see what I do, what do they call it? You know, it's like, what is George doing? You know, he's talking to me about this.
Yeah, if I can figure that out.
What's that?
Say that again, John.
I'll be damned if I can figure that out.
What is George doing?
I have to unmute just to chuckle on that one.
Yeah.
So like when people look at it, it's like a way for people to understand it, and a way for me to say, you know, this is how I think about it. You know?
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, before you came along, I had lots of the same thoughts of very arbitrary thoughts of I can be a lawyer 9 to 3 p.m. And then at 3 p.m. I can go to the float center, be a float facilitator. I think too, listening to Jesse too, he's starting to see how what he does, Jesse the Rolfer, is really, just something that, it's how Jesse approaches his craft of Rolfing has changed based on these skill sets,
Yeah.
just like Ken the lawyer.
It's like being one with yourself.
I was just going to say that. You beat me to it, George.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's so important that I really think that through, because, you know, that has to be stable, you know, that I mean, I know we talked about how it's not a point, it's not a corner, but that point, or what I'm expressing as to who I am to people, has to be constant, you know. Here we talk about it a lot in terms of music, and so that the music, or the note or the tune that's coming from the B1 part, it has to be constant. It can't be all over the place, but it also has to be fully considered, which is part of why my hesitancy is, or especially last week or yesterday, whatever, talking about this stuff. And so that's where I'm at with that, and it's being here is definitely helping that.
Okay. Dear.
Hey, George and Jesse, do you guys remember about 60 days ago, I asked you guys if you were getting your money's worth out of being trapped down in Puerto Vallarta with John, and you guys were all like, "Yeah, man, we're rocking it down here."
Yeah.
Yeah, I literally think about what you said a lot. You were like, you sent us a message on Slack. I think you were like, "Man, guys, like, can you believe how lucky you guys are?"
Right, like the other totally set you up, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Threw us through a loop.
Yep. Why don't you go down a few weeks earlier than you planned? Things are quiet down here in Jersey and PA, and then you go down there and everything shuts down.
Yeah, I mean, to paint a picture for people, it was a week before the coronavirus stuff really started going. I think it was like a week or maybe 2 weeks that we talked about, hey, well, why doesn't George and Jesse go down for a weekend of training with John?
Okay.
And we were like, oh, that sounds great. Let's
Let's do that.
let's plan it for the end of the month of, I think it was March. And then like March 17th or 18th comes around, and New York and New Jersey are starting to close up, and it's starting to get intense. And I think John or someone mentioned, they're like, why don't you guys come down a little bit sooner? Like, it seems like you guys won't have much business. We're like, okay, yeah, we'll start a weekend sooner. And we flew down there literally like
The day after.
the day after that was mentioned. They're like, why don't you come down? And yeah, I hiked it down. Both me and Jesse, we hiked it down here. I thought the borders are going to be closed soon. that never happened. Oh, it's too much. And 2 months later, here we are.
Great.
So yeah, it's been really great here.
Good for you. Yeah. Good for you.
I didn't know that was the whole story. That's funny.
Yeah, that's great.
You don't, and you don't need a stinking passport, right?
I don't need no stinking passport. Right.
What's that about?
Oh, okay. Well, now that John's pulled me into it.
Oh, blame it.
So
Yeah, I did it.
So literally, yeah, like the 17th or 18th, Ken was like, yeah, like it's a good idea. Why don't you go down sooner? Because Quantum was going to be closed because they're ordering the closure of all these places. We're not going to have work for your clients. Ken's like, why don't you go down sooner? Go float. I mean, not go float. Go train with John. And then I was like, okay. And then I literally bought my plane ticket, I think, or I was literally about to purchase it. Clicked the buy button. And I was like, wait a minute. I think my passport expires soon. I checked my passport. It's set to expire 3 weeks from that day.
Oh no.
I was like, you know what? I'll be fine.
Oh, what?
You got to hear. So I did some legal research for him because some places you can't travel with a passport that's about to expire.
That's right. 3 months, right? Yeah.
It just so happens that you can travel from the United States to
To
Mexico,
Mexico.
on a U.S. passport, even if it's not going to expire until even if you only have 1 day left on it.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they asked me at the airport, they're like, oh, like you're going to come back before it expires, right? I was like, yep. Yeah, definitely. I'll be back before it expires. And I bought a plane ticket just in case they were going to check, but I wasn't planning on taking that plane back, you know. But I mean, we can get it sorted out here.
We got all the bases covered.
So, John, you're harboring a fugitive, huh?
Yes, but from reality.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, Mexico is way safer than New Jersey, so I mean, I think I'm in the right place for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. Yeah.
It's a good place to be.
Okay. Well, anything else before we break for the weekend? We'll come back on Monday and we will talk about intuition function. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. See you on Monday.
Okay.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yep, you too.
Bye.
Thanks. Later.
Everybody. Was Terry on this call?
She was.